Enterprise on BFM 89.9.
Good afternoon. This is Enterprise on the business station BFM 89.9. And on Toolkit this afternoon, we have Nuraslina Zainal Abidin of Genaxis. And with her is her guest, Suresh Tiru of Jobstreet. We welcome Suresh back to our studios. Now, they're going to talk about continuous improvement and Six Sigma at Jobstreet. So welcome to the studio to the both of you. Maybe we could start by finding out from Nuraslina, exactly how do you come into the picture here with Jobstreet?
I think in the area of continuous improvement and also Six Sigma, the main factor when we talk about cost management, we talk about Six Sigma, is all about cost management, is actually the people factor, right? So because whatever you do is that the workforce within a certain organization will have to work with the awareness of cost, time or urgency, and also quality. So private companies have spent a lot of money and also time whenever they move towards Six Sigma or continuous improvement initiative to train and develop the awareness of these three factors that I've mentioned just now, or the competency in the people that they have hired. Now, we found that the basis of it all is actually the workforce that goes into every corporation.
Okay.
So now, and we believe that the education system of which produces this workforce is the underlying factor which will impact whether or not the workforce that we produce are actually matured and able to meet the demands of the business. Now, that's where we worked with Jobstreet last year in coming out with a seminar that talks about Six Sigma in education, where Jobstreet had provided us data, or rather provided the education people that was at that seminar, the data in terms what are the market demands for people who has continuous improvement or Six Sigma knowledge from the business environment out there. And from the data that they have shown, is actually the demand is quite high, right? That is actually the basis that we've worked at. People like myself who work on continuous improvement and quality, and also people like Jobstreet who actually provides or rather do the matching for the organization in terms of the workforce, actually plays a very important role in providing the inputs towards the education sector or whoever is producing the workforce in terms of what is actually the requirement from the business area out there. That was how we started to be in alliance together.
Okay, so we come now to the main question. How do you maintain cost in this very trying economic time? We'll start with Suresh. How do you maintain cost?
Thank you, Alan. Well, I think at Jobstreet.com, I think we're quite cognizant that while we have a comfortable position in Malaysia, the business environment is very, very competitive. If people don't use us, there are alternatives out there. So that is definitely a concern to us. Also, we've expanded from Malaysia to 7 other countries in the region. And as we expand, not all the operations are at the level of maturity that Malaysia is. So to be able to go out to Thailand or Indonesia and invest 3 years before we come up to speed requires a very, very cost-sensitive business model. We're fortunate in a sense because our business doesn't require us to have a lot of raw materials like a traditional manufacturing industry, for example. So, we don't have to buy raw materials, we don't have to build things, and we don't have to store them and deliver them to our clients. Everything is done electronically with Jobstreet. Our key inventory, which is our database, is electronic. In fact, it's actually based in Malaysia and Singapore and then served around the region. So we have that big advantage. So while we have those advantages of not having to build stuff, we also don't have to open storefronts like other service organizations. We are very cognizant that customers are expecting us to provide outstanding service at very low incremental cost. And that's really been our business model, being able to reintroduce recruitment practices or recruitment standards that essentially use new technology that allow customers to cut their costs by up to 90%. So if you compare an online service like Jobstreet against traditional media, we're significantly cheaper. and we've been able to actually help our customers grow their business at significantly lower costs. So that's our key driver in the industry. We make markets and we make economies more efficient.
But to maintain that quality, sometimes people say if you cut costs, you lose on that certain quality or efficiency that that you have come to expect. Anybody would like to answer that question? And what's your opinion on that?
Based on my experience of doing continuous improvement and cost reduction for a lot of companies, it is actually a balancing act. Because in terms of performance indicators, when we look at quality, when we look at a Six Sigma initiative for that matter, or continuous improvement initiative, there's this triangle that we look at where cost is at the top of the triangle, and then you have time and quality at the bottom of the triangle. So at anything that you do, the peak of it or what you're trying to control at the end of the day is the cost factor. But the time and quality, the delivery, and also the quality of the services that you actually deliver is a balancing act with regard to the cost that you have to manage. Now, this is where a lot of companies say, if we cut down costs, we will have to sacrifice quality. Not necessarily, because in the normal operations, normal everyday work that we do, on an average, most corporations that I go to, there are about 30 to 40% of wastages. So when we go in and evaluate, we will be able to tell you what level is your process. And most of the time we use the Sigma calculation, and we'll know that if you're at 3 Sigma value, your processes are 40% of your processes are actually wastages. So which means that if your revenue for the year is 1 million, you are actually spending 400,000 is just wastages, but you're still charging the customer. So for the matter is that if you're producing a pen and you sell it for $1, but if your process is at a 3 Sigma value, you are actually charging the customer 40 cents more because of the wastages or the defects that you have in your processes. So it's balancing. What is the customer willing to pay at the end of the day? So if the customer is willing to pay $1, so you have to manage the $1 within the cost as effective and as efficient as possible to meet the customer specs. So I'm sure we know that, if we pay $1, we don't expect a Mont Blanc pen.
Okay.
Right? So there is what we call as a customer perception in terms of quality. You meet that minimum customer perception is where you balance the act of quality and cost.
Suresh, I'm sure cost reduction is something very important at Jobstreet. What are your secrets so far? I'm sure technology plays a huge role in that. A lot of people say, first thing you do, eliminate the man and replace it with the machine.
Sure.
And that brings down your cost immediately.
Sure.
But how do you balance that out?
Sure. I think that, if you look at an organization like Jobstreet, you've got to look at cost from two different perspectives. One is from our business model perspective. We introduce new technology and new services in the industry to replace traditional services. So, for example, we can deliver jobs to over 6 million job seekers overnight electronically through an email, and the cost of delivering that is quite minimal. So we're replacing the process of delivering a newspaper to everybody's doorstep, right? So to us, what's critical is innovation. How do we use new and innovative things to provide better services, additional services to replace what would typically be considered traditional services? So innovation plays a big part in our business model to be able to provide services at a fraction of what was provided before. That's at one level. At the second level, even though we're cutting costs significantly and being able to provide services to our clients at significantly lower cost, we need to continuously innovate, we need to continuously improve such that within that structure we can, every year go back to our customers and say, I'm giving you more services for the same price, or maybe even give them discounts over time. And I think that, within the structure, there must be systems and processes put in place and people resource to drive down cost by, improving our processes and how we do things, continuously continuing to innovate and automate.
What's your biggest expenditure at the moment?
Sure. At Jobstreet, interestingly enough, our biggest expenditure is not the servers.
Okay.
It is actually the people.
It still comes down to the people.
It still comes down to the people, okay? We've got about 450 people in 8 different countries. We've got about 70 people in research and development that are developing all the services that you see on the website. Everything that you see on the website is built in-house, right? So that's technology that we own here in Malaysia. So it costs us money to develop that. We also have a large proportion of our staff dedicated towards servicing our customers. So we still need to go out and visit customers to sell our services. We still need to call our customers to sell our services. And we also have a customer service team that's dedicated to doing that. Now, there are many different things that we can do to try and cut the selling cost, as you may. For example, a few years ago, we introduced a system that would allow customers to self-order online. So a customer can visit our website, they can order online, they can post a job online, they can receive candidates automatically. We provide them with a back-end system that we call SIVA to manage all the resumes. They can shortlist the candidates, communicate with the candidates all online, and they can even pay us online, right? So it's a completely automated system, end-to-end, that requires no human intervention. It's not evolved to the point where we can completely get rid of all our salespeople yet, because we still need to go out and talk to the customer and convince them to buy our services and buy more of our services. But nevertheless, they can do all of that online.
So you are sort of moving towards a balancing point where you can keep your expenditure down, you can keep your human resource to the minimum level and increase productivity through the use of technology.
That is correct.
Okay. Nuraslina, I'm going to ask you this question. In Suresh and Jobstreet's position, they are in different countries. And different countries have different cultural backgrounds and different work ethics and different productivity levels. How does he manage to put all of those differences and get them to go in one direction in saving costs? How do you overcome all these cultural differences and perceptions?
Based on statistics, 80% of any culture change or any initiative with regard to culture, when we talk about quality, we talk about cost, it's all about culture. 80% of the success rate will depend on your people. Only 20% is how good your consultant is, what you've purchased, what you have, only 20% is dependent on that. So people factor, as what you said, comes from different background, different environment. How do we streamline them towards a main goal? So that boils down to the objective from the top management. It has to come from there. So if you have from different countries, but the main goal or the main objective of the organization is to drive quality, cost, and a timely consciousness, these 3 factors, and that have to be driven down into everybody's job scope, everybody's KPI, everybody's performance. So once you've done that, first you have to start by giving them instruction in terms of KPIs. Nobody like it, but it has to be that way. But after a while, when the organization have reached a certain level of performance, you can take that away from their KPIs, because it will become their nature to come to work and have these 3 qualities in them. But it has to start with the company's goal and direction. It has to be a strategic goal of the company that we have to continuously, in some Japanese companies, continuously reduce our costs 5% on a yearly basis. So that is a directive. So it goes down to every department. They have to work that way. But comes to a point where it becomes a culture, that there is no need for the management to demand or to dictate that as a KPI or performance indicator from every employee.
But should you adjust your KPI to take into account the situation in different countries? When you operate out of different countries, should you lower your KPI in certain places? Should you raise it in others? Or should you just still maintain that 1 point?
Yeah, this is interesting. My customers just had a chat with me that they just went to India and started an operation there, and they said, I think I have to downgrade my performance expectation, from a certain level. Then she said, but then if I downgrade, I have to downgrade over here as well, because then it's not fair for those people, because they are at par. Their education or their competency is at par, but it's just the work culture is different, so you feel that you need to downgrade. But there's no need for that. I mean, if you look at multinationals, wherever they go, they don't downgrade. whether they're in China, they're in Vietnam, or whoever. If they come, they're Daimler Chrysler, they come, this is Daimler Chrysler, whether it's produced in China or in Germany, it's still the same quality and it still demands the same level of input from their employees. So there's no need to downgrade, because an organization drives culture. Same thing as a country drives the culture of the people. When you work for a certain organization, it will drive your culture, provided the organization has a set of goals that they're very clear of where they want the company to go.
So once you've got your workforce working for you in the right direction, in the one direction, it's brought down your cost. Now, this question goes out to any one of you, can answer this. How then do you measure the satisfaction level of your customer then? How do you measure the satisfaction level?
I think I'll let Suresh answer that first.
Sure. Actually, if you look at our business at Jobstreet, we're at different levels of evolution in different countries. In Malaysia, Singapore, and Philippines, the internet access is very developed. Lots and lots of companies are using the internet and online services. So in that sense, we can have similar KPIs, similar standards in those countries. If you look at Indonesia, for example, adaptation is a little lower. So in a sense, we need to make some adjustments. Otherwise, we're going to set some standards over there that the team's never going to achieve today. Nevertheless, we need to show them, how the product evolution changes over time as the environment changes. So environment does impact how we operate in different countries. It does impact our cost structure. In a place like Singapore, where the cost structure is very expensive, people need to be efficient, and you find that people are more efficient. In Indonesia, there's a bit of catching up that needs to be done. And that's just
so your view is quite different to the previous question that I asked just now.
That is correct. And that's just based on our experience. These markets are at different levels of maturity.
So you have to put that adjustment into play.
We put that adjustment in
Okay. Who would like to define what innovation? Everybody talks about, you got to innovate, you got to change. But actually, how do you define innovation?
In the way that all the projects that we've done, when we talk about continuous improvement, we talk about evolution to the next level. Okay. And every process that we look at, and there's always some issues about it, and then we say, okay, let's come out of the box and think of a new solution. But sometimes the coming of the box is quite difficult. So people always think about, when we talk about innovation, it's all about technology. You've got to take out people and you put more high-tech solutions, softwares and all that. Not necessarily. Sometimes work culture can also be innovated. Some multinationals like IBM, for example, they've moved towards where it's off office. People don't work in the office anymore. They have virtual offices. So people, because they have a lot of programmers, and if programmers stay in the office, you would need a lot of office space. So for that to happen, your cost is going to be very high because office space is expensive. So what they do is when they cut costs, they say, okay, now you can work at home, but deliverables are there. They created a virtual office. People come, people can come for meetings, people can do whatever. This is innovation. And also, there was another day that we had a discussion that says there's this thing about when you go through training and you have to have an exam, right? And our normal thinking of exam is sitting down 3 hours and then there's a paper and you have to write an answer to that questions that was being asked. So then I said, why don't we change it to the applicability to the work environment? Exams no longer applicable for a senior GM, for example, because they need to use whatever knowledge that they've learned in training to convince the senior management. So why don't you turn that exam into a presentation of a proposal to the council or to the committee, get a project completed, change a certain way of things of being done, change that exam or change that expectation of an exam to a different perspective. So it's all about doing things differently. Yes, of course, when we talk about innovation, we want to have technology. That is one factor. But doing things differently is innovation. It is quite difficult to showcase the example of work culture, but you can reflect it in the performance of an organization.
So Suresh, how would you define innovation?
Sure. I would do agree that innovation actually can happen at multiple levels in the organization. processes need to be innovated all the time, and they don't involve technology. They involve how you work, how you interact with other teams and stuff like that. And a lot of times it's critical to innovate your processes, because it can be a key differentiator between you and your competition. A lot of times technology is easy to adapt over time. Unless you're continuously improving your technology, like an organization like Apple is continuously improving its technology, so they actually can innovate all the time. They're probably an exception in the industry. A lot of other companies face a situation where they innovate for a while and then people catch up. So it needs to be your processes, your service, and your team really that needs to be a differentiator. Nevertheless, coming back to Jobstreet, innovation is a word that we struggle with all the time. Because if you look at the evolution of the organization, I think there was a significant amount of innovation in the early days. Unfortunately, that level of innovation has slowed down. So we struggle with that. To us, innovation means doing new things in a different way. And when we first came out, we were doing a lot of new things in different ways. We were going to customers and telling them we are an internet service, and the customer would ask, what is the internet? All right, so we'd have to explain what the internet was to the customer. So we were key innovators. We were educating the customers. Now we have customers coming back and saying, I want this service, I want that service. So they are pushing back to us and forcing us to innovate. So it's something that we struggle with, because we want to differentiate innovation, which is big changes, versus evolutionary changes. And often organizations do a lot of evolutionary changes, but not enough of innovative changes.
Once you've got your whole organization, your workforce delivering on time, delivering the quality that you want, they have understood the targets that you have set for them. But all human beings at the end of the day want to be rewarded. How do you reward your staff? They've worked extra hard because it's tough economic times. They've managed to keep you alive. They haven't given you a fantastic profit, but they've kept you alive. How do you reward them? Because you don't have that amount of money to reward your people who have brought you, who kept you alive. How do you go about that?
What I can do is I can share what my customers doing about it. In continuous improvement or in Six Sigma initiative, every employee that goes through the training or development is expected to complete a project. And the project that they do is either bringing in the company extra money, revenue, or it's cutting down costs in the company. So that too would impact the bottom line of the company. So now bottom line, top line. So what they will do is that once you have worked on a project, and you have justified a savings of, let's say, 500,000 or 1.5 million, a minimum number of savings, they have actually agreed that we will reward you part of the savings that you've done. So which means that you've got to work for it. Like what you said just now, I've worked as hard as I possibly can, and what do I get out of it, yeah? So it means that the company agrees on the fact that if you don't do anything about it, we're going to throw the money away anyway. So once you've worked on it, we're going to reward you. Part of what you've saved the company, we're going to give it back to you. So the maximum amount that I've seen so far in Malaysia that has been done is actually 2% of what they have saved or brought into the company. So it's hard cash given back to the employees. But not all companies are in agreement with the concept of rewarding people with money. Because then they'll say, every time I ask you to do something, then you need to ask me, what is it that I'm going to get, the monetary part. So therefore, there are people who actually gives reward, as in the sense that you get to go for a talk representing the company, talking about what you have done, for the company, for the good of the company. That in itself would add mileage to your CVs, Or some of them give out luncheon session with group MDs or group CEOs, where these people get to sit down and chit-chat in terms of what they've done. Or some of them give an allowance whereby you can have extra holiday, extra leave, or they give allowance for continuous improvement. So if you continuously improve a certain process, then we give you a certain allowance on a monthly basis. So this is some of the examples that they have done, but also some actually do go with the wall of fame. they have a wall in a company where they print out a picture of this person with what they have done, the savings or whatever not that they have done, and put it on the wall. And as we walk around in the company, we know that, wow, these are all the millionaire of the company that saves the company money or bring in the company money. So this is part of what I feel the employee wants is they need to be acknowledged.
So the reward factor is also very important at this moment. Suresh, your experience.
I think I would agree with that completely. I think it's important for organizations to recognize that when they reward people, it needs to be a combination of monetary and non-monetary rewards. Just monetary rewards alone can be extremely dangerous. It takes the organization onto paths that they might not want to go. Just look at some of the bigger banks in the U.S. Yeah, I think that it's important to recognize that economic cycles affect everybody. So in good days, if you put in things in place without realizing what the outcome would be on a down cycle, I think you're going to put your organization in jeopardy. So if you have a reward system that's singularly based on monetary rewards, that might be good in good times, but it's going to implode in bad times like these. So, while monetary rewards are important and they are key motivators for organizations, we also need to understand that non-monetary recognition is critical, and people need to build that into their culture. I mean, things that we do and many other organizations do are simple recognition. We used to have a newsletter, a hard copy newsletter. We've done away with that. Now it's an electronic newsletter. So we've got a electronic wall, so to speak, and we put up messages there to recognize contribution, right? In a down cycle like this, at Jobstreet, we've decided that we won't do salary increments this year, but nevertheless, we're still doing promotions. So that's an opportunity for a few people to continue to progress their careers. Another key thing that we do that a lot of the better run organizations do is job rotations. So if somebody wants to learn something new, now's a good time to do it, because you don't have the same work rate that was there before. So it's a good time for you to learn something new. You can pick up new skills at a slightly slower pace. One key thing that we've done this year, and it's taken off extremely well, not just within our own staff, but also with the community and also with our clients, is some of the community projects that we've run. And the biggest one that we are running this year is what we call the retrenchment helpline. We've set up a website for retrenched people to come in and register. And what we're doing is that after they register, we've set up counseling sessions, teaching them how to improve their resume, teaching them how to attend an interview, where to look for jobs, what sort of jobs will be suitable for them. And you'll be very surprised. There are a lot of people who've been working with the company for 10 years, 15 years, never written a resume for the last 10 years, just don't know what to do. They're just frozen on their seats. So we're helping these people go through that transition. In that process, we've also met a lot of blue-collar workers, and when we talk to them about resumes, they don't recognize what a resume is. We tell them we've got jobs for blue-collar workers online. They don't know how to go online. So we're working with them to try and see how we can help them. We're printing out the jobs for them online and sharing with them, telling them, who to call, where to call, and stuff like that. So that's worked very well, not just for the community, but also for our clients and for the well-being of our own staff. They feel that they can contribute something back into the community.
Thank you very much for that answer. We've been speaking to Suresh Thiru of Jobstreet and also Nuraslina of Genaxis, and we've been talking about continuous improvement and Six Sigma at Jobstreet. Thank you very much for joining us here this afternoon. It's great having you here with us. And everybody else, you're tuned in to BFM 89.9, the business station.